Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. For this month's Birds Notes program, we're going to talk about bird banding as a means of better understanding the birds around us. Joining us from the Audubon Center in Huntington is bird expert and conservation biologist Mark Labar. Hi, Mark. How you doing? Thanks for being with us.
I'm doing great. It's a busy time for me. You know, all the birds are back, but that's a lot of fun too.
Indeed, I bet it is a busy time for you. So, Mark, it looks like we're going to start the show with a video from our own Marco Ayela. He caught some beautiful birds right after doing his recipe program. So tell us what we're seeing here.
So, you know, this is a pair of Canada geese that are out with their youngsters, and they're leading them around to feed, as you can see. And of course, those little guys are awful cute to look at. But what caught my attention is that band on that goose's leg.
Right.
And so it led me to think about talking once again about bird banding and how we use that as a means of better understanding birds.
Well, tell us what does so one, I just want to thank Marco again. It's so great that they probably whiffed his wonderful cooking and wanted to check it out, and he turned his camera on them, which was a wonderful thing for him to do. So thanks again to Marco for those shots of those beautiful gooselings or goslings?
Goslings,
Goslings, of course,
yes,
from the Canada geese. So how does banding kind of help us learn more about birds? What does it tell us?
So banding is basically a means to, if you want to say, name a bird. And for instance, we talked about that goose band, the banded goose. And here's a band that I found up on Rock Island on the lake. And you can see the band is open, so it must have fallen off the bird's leg. But I was able to read the band number 1078. 90572 and report that number to the Bird Banding Lab, which is down in Maryland, DC. It's a government organization, and found that bird was banded down at Dead Creek Wildlife Management Area. So it was an older band and had probably been on that bird for a while, but it allows us to track movements and you know, see how long birds live and productivity, you know, how chicks fledge. So it's pretty exciting. This next shot is one which always gets me fired up. So this is what's called a Brewster's warbler. It's a hybrid between a golden-winged warbler and a blue-winged warbler. You can see it has those golden wing bars. But we caught this over at Nordic Farms in Charlotte. And what was interesting about this is once we got it out of the mist net, which is what we use to catch these small birds, you can see that it had a set of, you know, a band on it. And, you know, we put the band on the bird's legs, and that band can tell us, you know, we read that number and we can tell who it is. And it turns out this bird was a bird that I had banded last year, pretty much in the same place. And so it told us that this bird had probably migrated to Central America and come back to here in Vermont to Nordic Farms and is using the same habitat to breed. So these are some of the things that we can find out. We can also determine the age of these birds. So for instance, with this particular species, you can look at the number of spots on the tail feathers. And I can tell that this bird is at least 2 years old, primarily because that little white dot on that inner tail feather comes on as the bird gets older. So lots of information when you catch birds, and we put bands on them, and we track them.
Must be very exciting to find one that you banded that has been down to South America. So where does banding take place? Does it take place all over the world?
Yeah, so which is great for me. It does, because you know, banding, they call it in Europe and England, they call it ringing, but it is something that is done all over the world and has been done for quite some time. And I get to go on projects where banding is done. So this is a Betus ash, She was the lead bander on a banding station in Belize that I went to in 2019 to help her out. You can see she's holding a gray catbird. Now, I went down there in the wintertime, and gray catbirds spend their time in Belize.
Hmm.
So a lot of the work that we do at these remote locations also tell us about where birds that breed here in Vermont are wintering, and gives us a lot of information on full life cycle conservation. Here's another bird that we caught. This is not one we see in Vermont, but this is a worm-eating warbler, which is a breeder that breeds a little bit to the south of us here. But again, winter's in Belize, so we know these birds are connected to these tropical climates, and we really need to do conservation on both of those. This is another southern bird. This is a Swainson's warbler. So this is a bird of the southeast, and one never knows with climate change. It could be a bird of the northeast too, as time passes and things change.
Right.
So it's really exciting when I have fun going to different places to band birds. And so it just gives us a lot of information, which we can then use to apply conservation actions to keep these birds protected.
And even those two warblers that you were saying, come to places south of us, but not too far south. If they come up here, it says something to you.
Right. And so we're already starting to see some birds like hooded warblers, which are a southern bird, show up in Vermont. And of course, over the years, we've had a number of species that have shown up here, maybe not of climate change, but range expansion. So it gives us an idea of how birds are moving. And again, site fidelity, that one Brewster's warbler coming back here to Vermont. And it provides us that connectivity from place to place.
And you have a local bird from Belize that's very exotic that I don't think we see up here.
Yeah, no. And this one I threw in because this is a red-capped manakin. And this is a striking birds. And when I was in Belize, there were a lot of striking local birds that we caught as well that they'll monitor. This is the only Belizean bird that I have. So maybe in the future, I'll take some time and put together a bunch of shots of some Belizean birds and talk a little bit more about my time down in that fair country.
That would be great. And so for the rest of today, you have a couple of images and questions from some of our viewers.
So let me bring up this first one.
From Peggy Brown of Hyde Park.
That is correct. Hold on, let me see if I can, well, there it is. I'm working my computer here. Maybe sometime soon we can do this in person.
That would be great. This is a Parola?
This is a northern Parola, and she writes, hi, Mark, just had to share this. He has been flying up and hitting the window, obviously seeing his reflection. I put the blinds down, but he's still doing it. I've gotten some great pictures and a video, but sure hope he doesn't hurt himself. So we know that robins and cardinals, and there's a bunch of other birds that will bump into windows because they see their reflection, but to have this little guy, which is so brightly colored and is usually a bird that you really need to see with binoculars high in the tree, bounce into the window is just a great opportunity for someone to see a bird up close.
He's really a striking bird. And then I guess Murray McHugh of Granville also wrote into you.
Yeah, so we work with Murray. He is the regional conservation director down for the Nature Conservancy at a number of different sites down south, one of which is the Buckner Preserve, the Helen F. Buckner Preserve, which we do work with golden wings and blue wings on. And he came across this nest while we were out there. Now, while we see a lot of golden-winged warblers and blue-winged warblers, they're very secretive in their nesting behavior. And so he found this nest and eventually spent a little time and found that it was indeed a blue-winged warbler. When he took this shot, it only had 2 eggs, but it's now up to 4 eggs. So Just a great opportunity to see a bird nest up close that you normally don't happen to see, and helps us with our efforts working with the Nature Conservancy down there.
So is Buckner's in Granville, New York, or is it down in southern
No,
Vermont?
I wanted to give him credit for where he lived, but Buckner is in West Haven, Vermont.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And another question from Martha Shepard wrote in.
Yeah, so this one, she had a pretty simple question. Hi, Mark. My family is interested in putting up some bluebird houses. And after looking at the internet, it appears that cedar is the best because it weathers well. Which wood would you choose for Vermont weather? And is painted pine an okay choice? We are hoping to paint some cheerful colors. So, yes, cedar is a great wood to use for, anything outdoors, but most of our boxes here at the center are just built out of pine, which is often, a lot cheaper. And, you can have scraps of it here and there. So if you can afford cedar, go for it. But pine works just as well. And then as far as the painting, you can put some designs on bluebird boxes. You just want to make sure that you don't paint the inside. Obviously, only the bluebirds would get a chance to see those designs. And you don't want to use dark colors.
Okay.
Because the dark colors will make the box heat up from the solar radiation.
Great tip. So we're just out of time, and I want to encourage other people that might have a bird-related question for you to show them your address here. You can pass it along to Mark at the address on your screen, or you can drop Mark an email. His address is mlabar@audubon.org. So, Mark, thank you so much for being with us and answering all these questions. We can't wait to see you next month.
Yeah, always a fun thing for me. So, yes, looking forward to it.
All right. See you next time. And thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Stay well.